Hey everybody, welcome to another episode of Heavy Metallurgy's Album Club Wednesday episode. Thank you for joining us, and I'm back from my Jackal show I went to see. I saw some stools get chewed up by chainsaws, and heard about lumberjacks, and saw some assless chaps and some Trump hats. It was sweet.
You
Super
were
sweet.
watching Ariana Grande, and you know it. Don't try to cover it up with some kind of metal adjacent act that may or may not, play, biker rallies and
That
things.
other people care even less about.
You don't get that much credit. No. It's all Keisha concerts for you these days, Mister, and everybody knows it.
Alan and everybody held down the fort, and thanks for all for coming. It was a great time. I watched the episode that night when I got home, and good stuff. And Kellen and Jim, welcome. Kellen is from Killing for Company, link in the description. Jim is from Eihwaz Recordings, link in the description. Go buy yourself some death and or black metal and or dungeon synth swag. Some cool stuff in there, some cheap prices, some good music. He's got shit to move, so let's help the guy out a bit. Alan, we'll start with you. My intrepid co-host, how are you today?
I'm doing pretty good. We're getting all geared up for a new semester at work, but I've also found some time today to record a new video for next week. So still getting some records spun and making some YouTube content.
And speaking of, the man himself has finally crested the 1,000 subscriber mark. So thank you everybody for helping Professor Steele out, getting him over the hump. And now he can start posting little things on YouTube and polls, and which didn't really pan out the way he wanted it to.
Oh no, it panned out exactly the way I thought it would, and it was glorious. Yes. Yes, I can now bug and annoy people with all kinds of completely frivolous pictures and polls and stuff. Polls will probably be my jam, I'm suspecting. I can have fun with those. Sometimes you just got to make your own fun. I'm good at that.
That's right. But Kellen, we'll start with you. How's it going, and what's going on with your channel? What's coming up next so people know? Then go over and subscribe and all that good stuff.
Yeah, it's going well. Happy to be back. This weekend, I am getting ready to record the first episode to a Blue House Nord deep dive. So
fun.
That'll be recorded this weekend, probably at the time of the album club next week. That'll be up and ready for viewing. So
sweet.
Yeah, that basically it's covering Blue House Nord from 95 to 2009.
Are you going at that solo, or are you having guests on?
Yeah, so Peter from the Metal Vault doesn't have a channel, but he's on Instagram, and we might have Jeff show up depending on how his health is doing. But yeah, I will have some other people to chat it up and talk about Blue House Nord.
Sweet.
Very
Jim,
cool. Looking forward to it.
We missed you last week, but we held the fort down. What's going on in your neck of the country?
Not much. When I was in Chicago last week, and I, not a sports guy, but they took me to a Cubs game, which was actually kind of fun. Free beer, and everybody's like, "Oh, they're gonna lose," and then they fucking won, and I took all the credit. I was like, "Because I'm here, man." That was a good time, but definitely happy to be back and to talk some smack about dissection worship.
There we go. And that's why we have gathered here today to talk about A Dying Wish, German band Thulcandra's fourth full-length album. I got a little teeny bit of history, not a whole lot. The band was initially started in 2003 with Stefan Kammerer, unfortunate name, or it's Kammerer. I don't know. Probably Kammerer would probably be a little safer. And a gentleman named Jürgen Zitz in 2003. In 2005, they recorded one demo, Perishness Around Us. They recorded that in 2004. In 2005, Jürgen committed suicide. They weren't too thrilled about the way the demo sounded and turned out, so they shelved it anyway. 2008, Stefan moved to Munich, rekindled the band, and since then has released 4 full lengths and an EP. We've got Fallen Angels Dominion is the debut. We've got Under a Frozen Sun, the second album. Ascension Lost, third album. and now Dying Wish. As you can see, they're all very blue. They've all got the Necrolord artwork, very much in tune with the band that this band is emulating, which is Unashamed, Unabashed,
Motley
Dissection
Crue.
Worship.
Hell,
Yes,
I
Motley
mean
Crue.
Dissection.
Dissection Worship. Pure, there's no ifs, ands, or buts. That's what this band is. And yeah, it's been sitting on my pile for a long time. I've listened to it once. I thought it would be a great time to throw it in front of these guys and spin the CD a few more times. I know what I think about it, and I'm curious what y'all think about it. And I guess we'll start with Kellen, since he's the young blood here. What were your thoughts, your first impressions?
It is, on one hand, an absolute success of a record. On the other hand, I was completely indifferent to it. I guess it's a weird sort of dichotomy, but it was, familiar. I liked it. And I listened to it multiple times because I really wanted, to have something insightful or for it to emotionally register with me in some capacity. But I just never got there.
Right on. Jim, what were your thoughts?
Thulcandra, they've been on my radar for a long time, because, I love the first two albums of Dissection, which most, metal fans do. But I always kind of felt like, oh, this is great. Now I want to go listen to Dissection. So I never actually put any money down for any of their stuff. I will say that I was, paying a lot more attention to it this week, with this being on the radar, like, I got into it a little bit more. Like it stuck with me more than I thought it was. It was because of the musicianship and the interplay of the guitar melodies, it had more staying power with me this time. So that's my quick and dirty there before we get deeper.
Right on. Right on. How about you, Alan?
My first impression can be summed up in 4 words. It's the same 4 words most people would probably use. Very good Dissection clone. That's all I've got.
That's all you got.
that is the first impression, and that could not be my first impression.
End of stream. Everybody, thank you for joining us. It's been great. Thanks for letting us pollute you guys for 10 minutes.
But no, I to elaborate. This was a band that I think both you and Devin had mentioned this one to me at various times. It's like, yeah, they sound a lot like Dissection. Check them out. And so I did. I actually owned this one before you had even picked it. And so I was like, okay, if it's kind of like Dissection, there's a good chance I'll like it. And yeah, that really was the first impression. It's like, wow, this is really dead on Dissection style metal.
Yep. And I'm assuming you're finished. I'm going to jump in here. It's tribute to the point where they take riff passages or melody lines directly out of Dissection songs and tinker with them, the framework just a little bit, maybe fuck with the scale a little bit. There's a song on here, The Spirit of the Night, which is live. It sounds pretty much almost verbatim starting off like Thorns of Crimson Death. It's the same melody lines. First impression, I'm not shocked. Like I said, Alan likes to throw around the sick little monkey part. Well, I'm a Dissection fan, and there's probably no real reason why I need to own all 4 of these albums, and it's mainly because I'm a Dissection fan. Are these guys amazing? They are an amazing Dissection clone, to the point that they've completely cloned the production, the feel and the riffs, everything from the artwork. It's weird. It's weird. I'm just going to go there. It's weird. And the more I listen to the new album this week, I'm a little less impressed and just kind of like thinking to myself, what's the point? That's kind of my first impression. What's the point? Really good, really solid. Yeah, man. It sounds like Dissection, to the point where there's 5 or 6 occurrences throughout this album where they are lifting direct. They're plagiarizing Dissection. They're lifting the melodies out, changing a few notes, but the feel, the tempo, the thunderous drum rolls, it's exact. And yeah, that's just kind of where with the first impression. I'm just kind of okay. I bought this. It's going to sit on my shelf. There she sits. You know. But yeah, and I guess let's get into, we're trying to throw a couple little oddball things into these outline questions that we do. And this past weekend, I went and saw some bands here in town, one of which was a cover band. They opened up the set. They were a solid cover band, playing Prong, Anthrax, Iron Maiden covers, Little Pantera, Worship going on, and with a lady singer. They were good. They were fun. Still, it was two other bands that were playing all originals mostly. And what's the point? I mean, these tribute bands are out there. It's cool that these people all get together instead of just sitting in their room playing. They're actually learning other people's music. This isn't really like that. This isn't like a cover band at a bar. In that case, they could have just went and done a covers album, done a bunch of Dissection covers albums, but instead they went one step further and wrote original material with, the help of John Nodtveidt. I mean, by taking some of his harmonies and riffs and ideas. I mean, how does it look this day and age, 2022? I mean, tribute bands, live when you're drunk and, whatever, it's probably a lot of fun. What do you think about actual physical copies of tribute? I mean, Thulcandra isn't the only. They're not the first. They won't be the last. They're not the only one out there. What do you guys think about this whole formula? I mean, it's a formula, and it's on Napalm Records. I think all their shit has been on, every single one, which is a pretty major label in Europe and maybe even worldwide. I don't know how major. I mean, a lot of huge bands are on Napalm. But let's start with you, Kellen. What do you think about the framework of tribute bands or cover bands or tribute bands?
Yeah, it's a great question. When you posed that, I was thinking at this point, I mean, it's kind of an open question, but so much of what metal through the 90s into, I guess, the year 2000, like so much of what was original and creative and foundational happened in the 20th century. And I think it's fair to say that in the 21st century, how much of the bands that are coming out are doing something dramatically original without it to some degree bearing a large mark from the bands that influenced them. That's kind of an open question. I was thinking about it to you specifically about how do I feel about tribute bands. That's really hard. I think Rick mentioned earlier in the comments as to where you draw the line between when a band is tribute and when it is heavily influenced by. I think we're kind of splitting hairs there. But for me, just in my collecting habits, I will on an annual basis look for a band that to some degree plays in this style. I just, as a fan of the music, I want every single year, I'm curious to see who's playing in this kind of dissection style because, it's such an important band. I'm curious to see, what is on an annual basis, what's available. And I only have room though for one or two. I was thinking last year for me, this Pesame record, that was the one that I picked up, and I did not explore sort of a melodic, aggressive Black Death release after this. That's all I needed. And
that was a Dissection worship band too?
No, it's just they're playing in they're a Russian band, and they have members from Womb Ripper, which is a death metal band in Russia.
Marty likes that one. Kellen, you said the secret word.
Oh, guys, I got a band name idea. This is it, man. Bro, we found it. Womb Ripper. Fuck, dude. It's fucking brutal. Okay. Anyway.
Nonetheless, this is their melodic black metal project. So they play in a melodic black metal style. Anyway, that was the one that checked it off the list for me.
Pussy Terror just doesn't have the same flow, man. It has to be Womb Ripper. Anyway, go ahead.
What about Liver Puncher?
But anyway, but I think for people who love potentially this style of black metal, maybe they have more patience for it, and maybe they'll handle more, bands that are playing so heavily influenced by Dissection. But for the most part, I really don't need a lot of this style, and I don't go collecting for it. So when I heard this, I kind of thought, I've already kind of checked this off of the list. I don't need more of this in my collection. It's not like a missing sort of piece. So it probably will vary from individual to individual, but yeah, I don't know in terms of on a consistent basis how much I need from this style of black metal anymore in 2022 and beyond.
All right, Jim, what are your thoughts?
Yeah, I've, like I said, I've been on radar for a long time, and but I never actually picked it up, because I felt like there was just some sort of energy, that Dissection had. These guys, even though they're obvious Dissection worship, that there was kind of something missing. But maybe I'm getting a little more easygoing in my old age or something. But I kind of connected with it more now this time, and I, first of all, I'd much rather listen to this than Obscura any day, Stefan's other more well-known band. The tech death thing, even though I respect it and I respect the musicianship behind it, to me that stuff's just, it gets really boring super fast. And but there's like this like kind of really dark beauty about Dissection's first two albums, and I think that these guys kind of really got closer to it this time, even though I think Stefan's vocals on this latest album aren't as good as the first two. If you listen to the first two Thulcandra records, his voice is more ripping and more just just anguished, and it's kind of more like multi-tracked and buried a little bit in the mix more this time, so it isn't as much out there. But for me, Dissection's always been primarily about the guitars anyway. I'm kind of biased anyway, but just the interplay of the riffs and the melody lines over the tremolo picking and back and forth, and I think that sort of like interplay was more pervasive on this record. So I was kind of like, you know what, maybe I should go back and reconsider. Maybe I should go back and if not this one, maybe the first couple records, maybe get them on CD. But I do kind of worry though that to your point, Marty, like if I pick these up, will they just end up sitting on my shelf? I'll give an example. I'm a huge fan of Leprosy. That's my favorite Death album. And so when Gruesome came out, I was like, hey, this is cool. They're kind of going to go for that early Death sound. Matt Harvey's on.
Nailed it. They nailed it.
Yeah, and they did. It's really great. And I picked it up on vinyl and I listened to it like two or three times. Yeah, and there's nothing wrong with it. It was extremely well executed, and I like the homage to Chuck. That's kind of like a desert island band for me.
And the whole time you're sitting there listening to it with a beer, saying, "Fuck yeah, it sounds just like Death. Fuck yeah, it sounds just like Death." And then when it was done, you're like, I just want to listen to Death.
Exactly. I'm like, okay, now I want to listen to Leprosy.
And then you start headbanging, and you're like,
yeah. And so I do still have that kind of fear, even though I feel like the musicians. First of all, Stefan, obviously, he's the guy from Obscura. He can shred. There's no doubt about it. And so for him he has the talent and the skill level and the dedication to be able to pull off, John's style that was so unique, like really, really closely, and also add his own flavor. Right? He's got the chops to do that. But I'm sitting here still questioning: is it enough for me to actually listen to it, more than the first couple of times I buy it? And it's a tough question. I do feel like, hey, you know what? Those are such amazing albums, the Somberlane and I love the Necrolord art, all that stuff, but and it's with no one doing that really. I haven't really heard anybody that does it as well as Thulcandra does. When I hear it, I really do think Dissection. So I'm kind of okay with them doing it. I feel like that music should be honored in that way. In the same way, I'm really okay with Gruesome doing the Death thing, but do I want to listen to it more? And that's why I'm still afraid to put that money down, even for a CD. Definitely not vinyl. I don't think I want to spend it on vinyl, but I don't know if I want to put a CD because I just feel like it might just take up, some room on the shelf. And also, I got to say, rest in peace, Steve Grimmett from Grim Reaper. See you in hell, my friends. Love you, man. Sorry to hear about your passing. So, that's it.
Yeah, I read a thing from his wife or significant other on Facebook, and he wasn't sick. He just went to sleep, and she came back, and he was just gone.
Man, crazy.
Crazy.
Well, what can you do? Well,
Yeah.
spin you some Grim Reaper this week.
Yeah. Before Alan, I have you on. I mean, let's put it in perspective for 1 second. About the same time, I think Storm of the Lightsbane came out. Another amazing album came out from Sweden by a band called Sacramentum, called Far Away from the Sun, which is got the Necrolord art, sounds production-wise very in sync with Dissection, vocally like Dissection, musically like Dissection, but the differing factor is there's no Dissection, purposeful, planned out Dissection riffs on it. It's their own band, which to me kind of seems like what Thulcandra could have took that step and, been influenced by Dissection and wrote their own thing. And it would have probably been a lot more. I mean, I'm sitting here shitting on it. I've got all 4 of their records. I'm not shitting on it because I've spent probably most time with the first 2, but I enjoy them. They're fun. Throw in the car and go. It's like, they're fun. It's just, when you're starting to think critically on how you blow your money, and realizing after, the first album came out, how little I listened to these in, scope of the rest of my collection, it kind of makes you start to wonder. Anyway, Alan, what are your thoughts on this whole thing? Sorry, I'm wandering again.
Oh no, it's all good points from everyone. Hey, bands like this, yeah, it kind of begs the question of, how similar is too similar, and what's your tolerance for that? The first thing is going to be, of course, how much do you like the original? If you don't like Dissection, there's very little chance you're going to like a band that's trying to sound like Dissection. The same, is true for other bands. If you don't like Running Wild, there's very little chance you're going to like Blazing Stone.
Yep.
For me, part of the question becomes how much original material was there? For example, Storm Warrior, it never bothered me that they copied Walls of Jericho because Halloween only really did the 1 album and the 1 EP in that style. So to me, there was plenty of room for somebody else to kind of pick up that ball and run with it. Blazing Stone, there's nobody else that really did that same style. There's nobody else that exactly like Running Wild other than 1 or 2 other tribute style bands with former Running Wild members in them. But on the other hand, Running Wild did have a bigger catalog. There are more Running Wild albums you can play, so you can make the case that, something like Blazing Stone's not as necessary. You've got plenty of Running Wild albums to listen to. And with, Dissection, it's maybe somewhere in the middle. Like you correctly pointed out, Marty, there are already some old school bands that sound an awful lot like Dissection. Sacramentum's the classic example. And there have been some other bands in recent years that have kind of tried to emulate the Dissection sound. Cinera. Watain tries to do it.
Cinera, exactly.
Cinera
Perfect.
Texas tries to do it. And Thulcandra tries to do it. Now, you only really had 2 good Dissection albums. So in a way, there is room to let some other bands explore that space. It's not like there are, 10 or 15 Dissection albums that all ended up sounding the same. On the other hand, yes, like Kellen said, you've only got so much room to work those kind of bands into rotation. And so I'm thinking Thulcandra kind of falls somewhere in the middle of this pack. I can't say anything too bad about them because I do like other bands in this tribute style. I like Blazing Stone quite a bit. I like Orchid quite a bit. They're a blatant, Black Sabbath tribute. I like Storm Warrior. So it'd be kind of hypocritical for me to sit here and say that there's something wrong with Thulcandra because there's not. And of the Dissection clones in recent years, I've noticed several people, as I read reviews and stuff over the past week, a lot of folks point out incorrectly so, Thulcandra probably does it better than some of the other bands that are hoping to ride the Dissection coattails. Thulcandra doesn't shy away from including the acoustic interludes. They don't mind using those really strong melodies. They're not just doing the fast, aggressive parts of Dissection. They're not just doing the plugged in parts of Dissection. They're kind of doing the full range of things that Dissection did, and not all the bands trying to pull off this sound do that. So they are very good at it. At the end of the day, I'll give it a thumbs up for sure. I do understand Jim's sentiment, and I have that same kind of concern. How much is this going to come off the shelf? I've got this one album because I wanted to check out the band. It was not a big deal. I like it a lot. But am I going to go out and buy 3 more albums from the same band that sound just like it? No, I'm not going to run out and do it quickly.
You're not sick enough. You saying how sick your little monkey are. You're just not sick enough.
The monkey is not that sick.
He's not terminal yet.
Yeah.
He's not on hospice yet.
It'll probably be one of those things that if I stumble across it in a used bin for $6 or $7, sure, I'll pick that up. If at some point I'm trying to order something for the kid and on Amazon and I need an extra $11 to round out the cart to get the free shipping or whatever, okay, I can see if there's another Thulcandra album in stock for like $11.99 to make that happen. But no, I don't think it's something I'll actually go hunt down the full discography for, because they simply probably won't get played enough. Like you and Kellen and Jim have all said, you can play it, you can listen to it, you can say, yeah, this is really great, but there is that nagging thing of, why am I not just listening to the somber lane right now? And to be fair, sometimes a folk person does just get tired of hearing those albums. If you've been listening to the somber lane for the past 25 years, like I have, yeah, sometimes you want to hear something like that, but you just don't need to hear that set of songs again. That's where something like Thulcandra comes in very handy. It gives you that style, but if you're burned out on the old classics, it does give you at least some different songs, even if those songs sometimes are really, really similar. So that's my 2 cents on this.
And you brought up some good points and some good bands, because, that Cinera album is exceptional. Mm-hmm. And it is total dissection worship. But it doesn't make me have the same thoughts that Thulcandra does. And Blazing Stone's another band. Total Running Wild worship. But they're not necessarily lifting Running Wild riffs. And, Sacramentum, even Storm Warrior, the first album, yeah, there's some stuff on there that really harkens back almost note for note to Walls of Jericho. But as that band went on, they maintained the sound, but they started writing their own riffs. Thulcandra, 4 albums in, this is still full of John Nodtveidt. There is direct, passages of his music, the feel, everything. It's down to the note almost. And he'll change a couple notes in the scale, but that for me is what, yes, Dissection put out 2 amazing albums. John turned out to be kind of a piece of crap. Not kinda. He is a piece of crap. And he put out a shit album. Some people don't agree with that. But
and they're wrong.
They're wrong. Thulcandra has done 4 really great albums, but instead of coming up with their own riffs within that vein, they ended up just kind of reenacting the first 2 albums. And that's where, the difference lies between Storm Warrior and Cinera and Sacramentum and Blazing Stone. And those bands are playing their own damn riffs, but with, inspired by. And I guess that's where the problem lies with me on these tribute bands. And, granted, I bought all this band stuff because they are good. And at the end of this, I'm going to say this is good. It's a good album. It's really good. But what's the point? And it got me thinking, as I was listening to it today, I'm thinking, okay, if this is the only band that these guys have been in, what is their motivation? As a musician, you want to put your own stamp on your influences typically. And, people say you sound like this or you sound like that, cool, thanks. But, you want to put your own blood and sweat into those riffs. But then I started doing the research for this thing. The main guy, Steffens in Obscura, So, okay, this is a side project, but it's a side project with a major label backing. He was also in live Death to All, the Death cover band. He was also in Secrets of the Moon, which I think they're broke up at this point, which is a German black metal band. Pretty decent band. The drummer, Erebor, he was also in Secrets of the Moon. He was also ex-Nargaroth for a little bit. So this is totally a project, just a funsies project, and it sounds like they're playing, the live tracks at the end of this, they're playing in front of a big audience. And Europe gets a lot of things, and you're drunk, that's when these bands shine. You're drunk, you got a band up there that sounds like Dissection, fuck yeah, I'm gonna shake my fist and sing along, and that's cool. But to sit and buy it and repeated listens, especially when there's not much differing, since there's a lot of Dissection riffs on this stuff, there isn't a whole lot sitting and apart from their idols, you know what I'm saying, or the main muse for this band. But yeah, I guess we could leave it at that. Is anybody else anything to add to that? It was a long roundabout way to get here, but here we are.
I guess one quick follow-up there, Marty, that you mentioned at the end with like the live appearances. Part of the appeal for these bands can depend on what the original band is still doing. Nobody's going to see. There's not going to be a Dissection reunion tour.
No.
Any new fans are never going to have a chance to go see that band live.
No. And so great. They were up to the end. They were great live.
Yeah, but to that end, a band like Thulcandra or Sinra, if they're out playing live, it can give fans of that style a good experience.
Yep.
On the other hand, at the other end of the spectrum, with Running Wild finding their groove once again, the need to go see something like Blazing Stone is less than it would have been maybe 10 or 15 years ago when Running Wild was, kind of off on walkabout, rediscovering their inner monkey or something. At that time, you couldn't see a good Running Wild show, and so Blazing Stone would be like, yeah, that's a good substitute. But now it's just like, oh, yeah, you go see Running Wild instead. You don't need to go see the tribute.
The crux of that biscuit, though, Alan, is if you put the new Running Wild up against the latest Blazing Stone, I would have to say the new Blazing Stone is better than the new Running Wild. I like the new Running Wild just fine. I think it's a step in a better direction for Rolf and stuff, but I think Blazing Stone just kind of nails it. There's just a little bit more fire and pizzazz and dynamics. There's a little more speed involved too.
There is, but that's because they're doing what Running Wild did 30 years ago. Yeah. And if Running Wild is, back, in top form and playing live with that kind of material, well, again, you can just go see Running Wild do that kind of material live. It depends on what's in their live set at this point too, I suppose.
Jürgen lives 1.5 hours away from every band in Germany, by the way, everybody, just so you know. or they're in his apartment right now listening to records and drinking while he's watching this.
I'm working on a mathematical formula that proves that Jürgen's backyard is the physical epicenter of the entire heavy metal underground. It can actually plot it out in 4-dimensional space.
Yep.
There's like a gravitational field that draws every heavy metal entity that ever sold more than 153 copies of their release toward closer and closer to where Jürgen is at.
Can I ask you a question, Marty?
Yeah.
Since you picked up 4 of their releases,
yep.
I like the idea, at least, that there are records out there that we continually chase, right? Like the first time you hear a record makes such a foundational impact on you that you're always, or like Leprosy, for example, for Jim, right? Like it's such an important record to you that you're constantly trying to go back and find that.
Always searching. Yep.
Right. So like, when you picked up the first Thulcandra release, did you think, like, okay, this is the start of something. Maybe I'll be able to go back and feel, Storm of the Light Spain again. Like, and it didn't quite get there. So you picked up the second release thinking they would sort of get to that next level.
I think it was a very subconscious yes to that, probably, but it was a little more subconscious than that. I think the first album gave me enough of a tickle, if you want to put it that way, that I was committed because, the first 2 Dissection albums, I mean, I've spun those a lot in my life because they're so fucking good. I mean, a teenager wrote some amazing metal, just absolutely amazing. And these really mature, strong harmonies that still stand the test of time. Was it enough for 2 bands? It could have been, but Thulcandra is just kind of floundering in it a little bit. Did I answer your question at all?
Yeah. I like that idea that why we continually go after this particular sound is at some point in time we've come across a band or a record that's had such an impact on us that it sort of
Never underestimate the power of nostalgia.
Right.
Never. Because if something impacts your life enough, whether it's a record, a smell, a food, a sound, a car, it doesn't matter. I mean, we're all, guys typically are 16 in their head until the day they die. And then when they get depressed, that's when people get depressed when they get old, because they realize they're not 16. Their thoughts don't match their body. But, for me, music is a humongous nostalgia thing. And Thulcandra completely played to that sleeping beast that comes out more often than I want to admit. And as you get older, it'll happen to you too, a lot, especially with music. You're one of those guys that I think connects with music in, same way that all of us do. It's just very much, record collecting until YouTube happened. This is a tangent. Sorry. Until YouTube happened, record collecting is a very personal pursuit. It just is. It's a drug in a lot of ways. You get that dopamine rush when you get a record that rules. And you buy records for so long, you just don't remember a time when you weren't buying records, and you just kind of get in this thing. And like you said, you're always kind of chasing the ones that really made you happy. But at the end of the day, the older you get, the more money you make, the more records you amass. At the end of the day, you've got 70 new albums. You're still going to reach for that one that awakens that nostalgic beast every single time. And that's where, the dark side of collecting comes in, where you start to question, why do I have all this stuff? But anyway, that's another discussion we've already had. But I don't know. Did I answer your question?
Yeah. I was curious because you've kind of established how you feel about the band, yet how many you kind of have gone on. And I can just say, I feel the same way. Like there are certain records that had such an influence on me, and on an annual basis, like I will keep up with new releases. I'm looking to sort of find that, like, this record nailed it for me. It had everything, did everything right. And I know it's still out there. I'm just not looking hard enough.
Yep.
And so I constantly kind of go through that.
And the thing with Thulcandra, just to sum up this little thing we've been on here, they've done enough to appease the nostalgia thing for me, but I've done 4 records. I think I'm done. I think if they put out a 5th record, they've proven over 4 records that they're not going to start injecting their own ideas into this. They're not going to progress. They're not going to take the ball that John, didn't necessarily hand them, but they took, and they're not going to build on it and come up with something the next level. John couldn't even take it to the next level. John wrote an amazing, almost perfect record, and he almost did what he had to do. I don't think he could have topped Storm of the Lightsbane, so Re and Chaos was born. And I get it, but Thulcandra's not doing it either, and I don't think they're going to, in the 5th album, start showing a bit of themselves. He's probably doing that with Obscura. You know what I mean?
Right.
But does anybody have anything else to add to this while we're still here before we move on?
No, I think, Kellen's got a great point. I do want to say that I feel the same. Like, I'm constantly looking for something that's going to make me feel that same fire of, that those older albums, did for me. And it seems like the older I get, the harder it is for me to find that, and Alan had a point in the comments, that we are hearing some newer sounds, but maybe because we had so much of a love and they were so engrossing to us in our youth, it's harder for us to connect to some of the newer sounds, I get that this is original, but I think it kind of sucks, you know what I mean? And so I'm very fearful of becoming that grumpy old man, like the closed-minded guy, you know what I mean? And so I really try to push hard against that. And sometimes I'll do, semi-blind buys just to kind of to push my own boundaries to keep me from getting jaded,
I'm about 85-90% blind buy still, because I'm still looking for Mind Wars that put the hair on the back of my neck standing up. The first seconds of that album, or Halloween's Eagle Fly Free on Keepers 2. I still remember the hair on my arm standing up when I heard that fucking song. It doesn't happen anymore, really. Once in a while, but it's not gone. You just gotta. There's just too many bands.
Yeah, I think that's another problem, and there's so much out there. It's hard to find it, But hey, that's what shows like this are great for. We discover things by talking it out. We discover things by communicating with folks in the comments, and to Kellen's point, we're just going to keep trying. We're not going to give up until we find that vibe again.
And I still love it. I still love music, and there's still bands that kick my ass, and I love it. I think, the golden era of exploration and wonder, and getting that chill down your spine is, we felt it already. And I talked to a person back in the day. I'm not going to say who it was because some people would know him. That had a bit of a crack problem. I said, dude, that shit's 98% addictive. After you smoke it a couple times, you're going to be addicted to it. Why'd you do it? So, because that first hit is such an amazing high. You're always chasing it from there on, trying to capture that high, and it's never the same. And, maybe it's that way with, the musical exploration. When you're younger, everything's new and exciting. Back in the day where there wasn't 12 million bands, there was a bunch of bands, but not like they are today. And it seemed like there was a lot more bands that had their own sound. I mean, look at the Big Four. The Big Four, none of them sound like each other. You know what I'm saying? And as we go on, like black metal, the explosion of black metal is, how that hasn't eaten its young and died out already is amazing, because there's been so many Dark Throne and Burzum clones over the years, but yet there's still bands that come out that put out some amazing shit. I'm rambling. I'm sorry, folks. Of course, that's what I guess people come to hear us talk, right?
No, there are good points, and you get that in all styles of metal. How many bands still just try to sound like Motorhead? And Motorhead always just sounded like Motorhead. You don't need another band to sound like Motorhead, but people will still buy those. So yeah, it's not something that's just related to dissection or black metal in particular. You get that across all genres. Folks, someone mentioned AC/DC clone band in the comments before, but said, yeah, they're really, really good.
And again, Alan made the point. It all boils down to how much you're willing to accept of, the plagiarism or tribute. But Kellen, what did you think of let's talk about the musicality. I think we've kind of already gone through all this, but what are your thoughts on the band themselves, the musical aspect of this band?
Yeah, I kept on looking to find something to fault them.
Yeah.
But at every single point, I was like, maybe they just, they need to introduce a little bit more sort of acoustic passages and like check that off. Maybe if they had a little bit more of a sort of interesting kind of atmosphere, like every single point that I could potentially look for a reason to fault them based on their interest in dissection. Like I kept on looking for something. I couldn't find it. So if I'm really going to nitpick about it, I'll come back to like a production notes later on, but I'm really like grasping for something to fault them because I didn't connect to this record, but I just can't really point to a specific reason other than I had kind of exhausted any kind of interest in this sound.
You just weren't there with them, and that's fine.
Yeah. But in terms of the musicianship, the songwriting, from an individual to a cohesive standpoint, like they nailed all the boxes. So for people who are looking to find, a dissection band in, right now in 2021 or in the future, like this is going to do it for you. I really don't have anything too much to complain about.
Absolutely. Jim, what are your thoughts?
Yeah, absolutely. Again, like, anybody that plays an Obscura is going to be a badass musician. They're going to bring their chops to whatever project they're doing. And so, yeah, and also to play John Nodtveidt's stuff, well, you've got to be talented. He was an amazing guitar player. There's to have in his mind those melodies and counter melodies, and then to put those on an album, where everything made sense. One guitar is doing a nice melody line, one's doing this other tremolo picking, and it just, it's all throughout the song, and it just flows and kind of, and every song on Storm of the Light Spring carries you away. I mean, where Dead Angels Lie is a journey, man, from the first note to the last. I mean, you're taken away like Calgon. That's for all you old folks out there.
Calgon, take me away. Yeah.
That's
Oh,
right.
I laughed first. Oh.
But yeah, man, and so, there's a lot of that here, and so it's done, to Kellen's point, it's executed perfectly, from a musicality standpoint. This guy's a flawless musician, and I wish I had, a quarter of his playing capability in my hands, because I can just listen to people like him and John Nodtveidt and just and be in awe, that said, there's a savagery to this section that is a little missing here, and so when I listened to Thulcandra, like, it was actually kind of like this, like, and this is going to sound odd, but like almost like a happy kind of and maybe it was a nostalgic vibe, but like, this is cool, man, it's kind of chilled out to it. And I can't ever say when I listened to Dissection that I was chilling out, so it's kind of interesting, like the effect, of like a just worship band other than the source material. The source material is savage and goosebump inducing. The worship band makes me want to just kind of, oh, this is great. I can work to this. So I don't think that that's a diss. It may sound like one, but it is interesting, like how there's a little bit of artifice there that doesn't give me the same emotions, but I still respect it, have a lot of respect for the skill that goes into making this accomplished of I don't know, I was almost going to say like replication, but I don't think it's like it's a ripoff. I mean, it's definitely like I'm trying to honor this, but in trying to honor it, I don't know that, like, to your point, Marty, Sacramento, oh my God, that one record, man, it is awesome.
They put out a bunch of good records, but that one is exceptional. That one is
I mean, that
crowning
that
jewel
one,
of their catalog.
Yeah, I mean, like that because they put their own souls into it and twisted that sound and made it their own. I do get that power vibe from Sacramento, but not so much here. And and maybe sometimes, like, you can technically copy something, but there's got to be something else going on in the soul for you to grab the real rage and darkness beneath it.
Zachary, I mean, the 3 albums leading up, there's some bangers on all. I mean, all these albums are really good. They are. There's not really anything to bitch about, but yeah. Alan, what are your thoughts on the musicality there?
Like Kellen said, they check off every single box and they do it really, really well. They can do the atmospheric parts, they can do the acoustic parts, they do the more aggressive parts. Flawless in terms of the execution, really. I will point out a couple of things. As I listened to it repeatedly through the week, I did pick up a couple of things where there's maybe some slight differences or a couple of other things worked into the music that keep it from being completely 100% dissection. The vocalist, is slightly different. He's got maybe a little bit of a higher range than John did. He doesn't have, sort of the, very same, cavernous dark tone that John had when singing. And there are points in the songs here and there where I think they actually are channeling a little bit more of something like Lord Belial, who is still kind of in that same style of black and death metal for sure. But there were moments where I was just like, now this sounds more like something off Enter the Moonlight Gate. This could have been on, an early Lord Belial album more than it would have fit on a Dissection album. So I do want to, throw out, there are here that are, it's not completely copy and paste, old Dissection ideas. There are some elements here and there that do make them a little different. You do have to pay attention. You do have to kind of dig into it a little bit to start to pick up on those. I didn't hear it the first couple of times I went through the album. But no, the execution is absolutely great. You couldn't want a band, to pull it off any better than this.
And I agree with what everybody says here, and I'm just going to touch on what Jim said about Thulcandra lacks the savagery that Dissection did, and that is a very excellent and observant point, because I wouldn't have thought of that until you said it, but you're completely right there. I mean, you listen to like Unhallowed or Soul Reaper, and there's just an intensity. You grit your teeth, but what doesn't make it splinter apart of those like commanding harmonies that just really they're so memorable and triumphant sounding. And Thulcandra takes the template. It's almost like a clinical. I mean, obviously that Obscura guy is a shredder, right? It's a clinical reconstruction of the dissection stuff, and that savagery it seems like it was grown in a lab. It wasn't lived. It wasn't. I think Alex was saying, he's a twist. John was a twisted human being, and it came through in the music. And that, part of that savagery is part of his personality coming through. This here is a shredder's interpretation of that savagery, coming from Thulcandra. Dissection music is complex. It's technical. It's amazing, but coming from something like Obscura, I'm sure this is, was a walk in the park type of guitar playing for him after, super crazy shit. So like I said, it's a clinical representation of that, but it just doesn't have that twisted mind behind it. It just doesn't have that fucked up, coming from a different dimension, evil, that ended up being in him, unfortunately. But that might be the biggest thing right there. Maybe that's the thing that on these 4 albums it's lacking for me. Maybe it's just maybe a little too perfect, a little too on the nose of a representation to really fully let it all in. You know what I mean? To really fully accept it.
I'm flashing back. There's an old episode of The Simpsons where Homer's trying to do something to impress Mr. Burns. I don't remember what. And at the end of the day, he doesn't get the job or the promotion or whatever it is. And Mr. Burns is like looking at him. He's like, there was just something missing. Let's call it heart. And it just kind of keeps echoing in my head as y'all are talking about this, because it's like, but I did everything I was supposed to. It's like, it's exactly what you wanted. It's like, yeah, but it's just missing this one intangible quality somehow, and it seems to fit what y'all are saying here.
Yeah.
Well, I was going to say, Marty, to your point, to me, because for the longest time, people have debated as to whether Dissection falls under a black metal or death metal band, right? I know people have varying opinions there.
I just recently read an interview with John in an old zine I found, and he called himself melodic death metal.
Okay. So where I was going with this is, I think Dissection to me always sounded like, at heart, a black metal band playing melodic death metal.
Yeah.
Where I think it's in the inverse direction for Thulcandra, right? They're a technical death metal band attempting to play black metal. Yeah. And in that sort of transition, I think to what we're all kind of reaching for is like, what made those early Dissection records so important was it had a very different sort of beginning, or whatever you want to call it, ethos, right, to start with.
Yeah.
And that separates, to me, to your point about it being too clinical, right? It's like Obscura has all the, to come from a band like that, and probably musicians who are attracted to a band member like that have all the talent in the world. They can accomplish anything, but they always end up sort of coloring within the lines of what it seems to be.
It pays to read, people. It pays to listen in school. It pays to be an overachiever. Good job, Kellen. You get the gold star for the day.
Yeah. Excellent point there, Kellen. For sure.
Very good. Nailed it. But let's you said you had some thoughts on the production. You wanted to maybe some negative checks in the.
I'm really reaching for something here, right? Like, it does not sound bad, right? Like, I'm not disappointed.
No. Yeah.
But it's just probably the gap in years, right? Like, if we're looking at, some of the Light Spain, we're almost looking at 30 years that separate them.
25, easy.
Yeah, in that time period, and it's on a major label too. So you're going to recruit all the same kind of modern production qualities, which is not, and it's not like a bad, I'm really reaching for something here, but it just to me did not have the same sort of all those intangibles that those classic 90s black metal or melodic death metal records had.
Yep.
And it for me, that's an important part of the experience. Trying to recreate that sound. It needs to kind of give me at least some kind of impression of what it was like the first time I heard Dissection. And if it doesn't quite get there, like I have a harder time tolerating it as a tribute act or heavily influenced by.
Right on. What are your thoughts, Jim?
I think that it really, they sought to, capture that sound on every one of these the Thulcandra albums. You can start at the first one, was it Fallen Angels Dominion, and then onwards. Yep. They sought that, Storm of the Light Spain production, and I think they did capture it. And then, it went through all of their subsequent recordings. But, you had a word you used in your last little rant there, Marty, that I really stuck out to me. And clinical was the word. And
yeah,
clinical's right, and to kind of bring in Kellen's point too, coming from that different direction, from a technical direction, it's admirable because I know that wasn't easy. To be able to grab that vibe and grab that mood, it takes skill to be able to, figure out like what can I do on a mixing board sonically to capture, that really specific sound, the Storm of the Light Spain, and to a slightly lesser extent the Somberland had, but there again, when you're, trying to recreate something from a technical perspective, that soul is gone. I almost feel like, and of course this is just, me philosophizing here, but that John just conjured it up, or maybe stumbled into it, probably more accurately, John stumbled into it based on what was available to him at his time, or based on the vision that he had. And, whatever the reasons, I think they did accomplish it. It is cleaner, by moderns, you can hear that modern sort of like, there's no real noise there. All you're hearing is the instruments, that's sort of like, that digital aspect that kind of like cleans up things. But by and large, I think they accomplished it. And I think the production is really, really good. But again, there's that sort of sinister vibe. I don't think that they did get that from the front production, but not because it wasn't technically there. I think they couldn't get that. I don't think it's possible. I think that's just something that Dissection had and they created, and no one will ever be able to really get. And this is where I think Thulcandra, had an opportunity to maybe differentiate themselves. Like, hey, maybe, if we're going to stay in this sort of sound and song, this sort of songwriting, maybe we can, change the production a little bit to make it all right. There needed to be something there where I think Stefan's originality, because I know he's got it. I'm not an obscure fan, but I recognize the skill and the talent, and I respect him. I know he's got it in there, but it seems like he has all these opportunities to make a decision, like either tweak the riffs a little bit more, maybe do something more. I do like how he added some cool keyboards here and there, but real subtle but nice. And but here again, he had an opportunity with production to kind of tweak it more to make it his own, and still he just kind of like went for that sort of clinical. Let me try to capture this again, and it ends up, like 4 Blue Necrolord albums, and so in a way it was a success, but it was I think it was too successful. An opportunity to kind of tweak it to make it his own was kind of missed.
Right on. Alan.
Yeah, I think Jim put it very well there. Once again, I'm just drawn back to the Simpsons quote. There's, they nail it completely. There's just something missing. Let's call it heart. But yeah, it sounds the way you'd want it to sound. It's, they've done a good job with the production. It matches, the music, quite nicely. So there's really, again, can't take off points for it at all. One little thing I just want to make sure we credit where credit's due. The cover artwork on A Dying Wish is not Necrolord.
It's different, yeah.
Necrolord did the first 3, but this time they got a German artist. His name's Herbert Lochner. He obviously is doing kind of a similar style, but it is a little different. So just want to make sure that Herbert got credit for doing the
and
cover
works
artwork on this.
Works for a lower rate than Necrolord does.
Maybe a little easier to get it scheduled and delivered on time. I don't know, but it's still a cool cover. It's still a cool cover, and yeah, I'm sure a lot of folks have mistaken it for a Necrolord piece, but just wanted to make sure we gave credit where credit was due with the artwork.
Right on. I guess for me, I got to look at what they're trying to emulate here. Storm of the Lightsbane was recorded by Dan Swano at Unisound Studios, which was Swano's studio. He was a very excellent engineer and producer. I mean, what a guy to have on your team. I mean, an amazing musician, a very talented vocalist, and he took the gear of his time. And one thing I always liked about Swano's productions were they're very organic. They are dark when they needed to be dark. They're heavy when they need to be heavy. And there was always this dark feel going on. You listen to a lot of the classic albums he recorded, and they all sound excellent. This again is trying to capture that from the the exact drum beat that's filled with reverb at the beginning of Storm of the Lightsbane. That happens 3 times on this record, and the big cavernous reverb, and you can tell they're really trying to get that expertise, that magic, the Swano magic on there. And it's a clinical representation, but it just doesn't quite get there. It still sounds fantastic. It's a great sounding record. You can turn it up, it gets loud, you can hear all the instruments. It sounds perfect. It sounds like Dissection. It just doesn't have that sinister vibe, that darkness, that atmosphere that Swano had, I don't think. But it's never better. It's like when they remaster albums and shit. God, I hate that. I just don't fuck with it. Just leave it alone, And that's what this kind of sounds like. Someone took Storm of the Lightsbane and tried to remaster it. With all the modern bells and whistles to me. But least favorite songs. Kellen.
I mean, I wish I could give you one. Perfectly honest. Like I part of the reason I was listening to it the past couple of days on such a consistent basis, I was hoping to have that moment where something just grabbed me. I was like, okay, when they ask me the question as to what your favorite song is, I'll have an answer because a moment stood out. But I just never had it. Like all of them were good. But nothing stood out to me to the point where I would single it out and want to come back to it. I just didn't have that moment with this record. And maybe I haven't listened to it enough, but yeah.
It just doesn't have the ring. I mean, Womb Ripper, you really can't get much better than that. I'm sure he tries real hard, but All right, Jim, your thoughts.
I think I liked it a little more. I was able to do some discerning there. I do like Funeral Pyre, the opener. I thought it was like, hey, I knew what the statement was going to be. The statement was like, this sounds like Dissection, and they screamed it out loud on the first song, and it was, everything was there that you're looking for. The acoustic overlay on the bridge, the very tasteful lead work. It's a great song. I thought so that one probably my favorite. Devouring Darkness is a close second. It was kind of like the epic track on there. It was really long, and there's some really cool acoustic parts. I got here, like right near the outro. It's acoustic outro, but there was like a part where the riff was like really high up on the fret. It was like really high, but it wasn't like ear piercing. It just sounded really, really cool and kind of distinct there. So I'd recommend Devouring Darkness for that reason. Least favorite was the title track, Dying Wish. I thought it was kind of a slow, boring, mid-tempo. I've never been a fan of going out like really slow and mid-tempo or a super slow. What's your last song? I
Start strong, end strong.
Yeah,
that's the way you gotta do it.
That's my opinion. I never really liked that, and A Dying Wish. Every time I got to that song, listening through this album for the last few days, I just kind of wanted it to end. So my recommendation, if you do check this out, check out, obviously first song, easy hit play, but go to track 9 and then stop. You'll be good to go.
All right, Alan.
Start strong, end strong. It sounds like the slogan for Teen Spirit deodorant or something.
They never called me. I could have made millions on that slogan.
There you go.
Just do it, Thulcandra.
Quench your thirst. Well, anyway, Jim stole my picks. Darn you, Jim. Yeah, I would. And Kellen's got a good point. It is very hard to tease out any songs here that are less good or more good than the rest of them, because they are all kind of very on par with one another. But I do think Devouring Darkness stands out a little bit, for the very reason I'd use the exact same word Jim did. It's got this more epic vibe to it, that it really feels like it's kind of building up momentum as it goes, that it's heading somewhere. Like some of the other songs, it does a good job of having some parts that change tempo a little bit back and forth, but they do it very seamlessly. So that song stood out for me just because it has a little bit more of an epic flair. It's one of the longer songs on the album too. One thing I did like is that the band pasted the songs pretty well throughout the album. They didn't let them drag on for no reason. Most of the time it was like 4 to 5 minutes, maybe 5 and change. But yeah, with that one, Devouring Darkness, they went a little bit longer, but it actually paid off. And as far as least favorite, yeah, I would probably pick the title track too. Although I think part of the problem is what you pointed out, Jim. It's the last song, and it feels like it does kind of drag the album down at the end. I really wish they had put it in the middle somewhere, because that might have helped break up the continuity of the album a little bit, that you could have taken a little bit of a break. You'd have noticed the song more if it was in the middle of the album. And then they got back to, the other songs that are, much closer in style to each other. Having at the end, it feels weird, and it is kind of easy to ignore or just, skip over it or stop after track number 9. So I don't know if it's really a bad song, but I think it's definitely in the wrong place on the album, if nothing else.
Yeah, agreed. 100%.
What about you, Marty?
Yeah, for me, there's no songs on here I disliked. I thought, I can't read that font that small. Come on. Scarred Grandeur and Orchard of Grievance, tracks 2 and 3, I thought were quite good. Track 6, The Silvering Silver.
Mm-hmm.
That song starts off with a kind of a different feel to it. I'm thinking, oh, wait a minute, are we going to get a bit of Thulcandra doing their own thing here? I was got my ears perked up, a little excited, but no, it goes back into the Dissection worship. So there were moments, a couple times on this album, I went, oh, okay, this is a little out of character, but it would always come back around. But yeah, I mean, A Dying Wish didn't really bother me because, I got the CD and there's 2 bonus tracks. There's a Spirit of the Night live and Night's Blood, a Dissection cover live. So technically it's not, there's more to come, and it's produced, the live tracks are produced so well, it almost feels like it's part of the album. You know what I mean? And this band has always been, doing, on the first album, they do The Somber Lane. On the second album, they do Life Demise by Unanimated, which is same country, same wheelhouse. I can't read that font. Come on, you guys. Hold on. Third album. What do they do on this one? Huh. I guess they don't do a cover on the third album. I thought they did on all of them. So, I mean, they leave you with a Dissection cover, and I would say it's perfect, but it's not. I was kind of surprised. They did it live, I think, and it seemed a little like they struggled a little bit, but they finally got into it. Good. I mean, I've got no track complaints. It's kind of hard to hate them. They're kind of perfect in a lot of ways. But what do you guys' thoughts? Judgment, final thoughts. I know where Kellen stands. I think we all kind of know where we stand here on this.
Yeah, like if you're into Dissection and this is something that you're a sound that you can't get enough of, this is a great band to go after.
Yep.
But outside of that, if you're looking for anything new, I think you're going to be disappointed.
Swing and a miss. Yep. Yeah.
Yeah, I think this is for only like the serious dissection diehards who, you just, you can't get enough, and you wish there were more, and after the 90s, and this band will give you more, but if you're not if you love those two albums, but you're fine with just those two albums, I do think that you'll end up not pulling this down very often, because even though they are excellently executed, they have the sound and the riff style down pat, it's just not the same, so you have to really just like want the continuation of that band, to be in the present. You want a reinterpretation of those same songs. If you really want that, then this will get you going, but if you feel like what John did in the 90s was enough, and you can go back to those albums and be happy, then you can probably pass these by, and you'll be fine.
Right on. Alan.
Oh, at the end of the day, I gave the album a thumbs up. I think I liked it a little bit more than some of y'all did, which is fine. But I understand everybody's reservations about the album too. And I'll readily admit, I don't know how often I'm going to be playing this one. I'm glad I did not go out and pay $15.99 for this CD, that I was able to, just sort of add it to the cart and get it with some Amazon points instead.
So dumb I am. I paid too much for it. Sorry. Go ahead.
But yeah, what Jim said is true. Some fans, they find a sound they like and they want to hear everything that's close to it. You're really going to like this album. You're going to like this band. You should probably track down most of their albums or all of their albums. There are other people that only really want to hear the OG of any particular sound or style. That for them, nothing is ever going to sound like Day Mysteries or Cause of Death or Leprosy, and they're just not interested in all these bands that are trying to do the same thing, but it's not the original thing. If that's you, then yeah, there's nothing here that is going to interest you in Thulcandra. I'll give it a thumbs up. I think it's a very well done album. They hit the nail on the head for what they were trying to accomplish. We may have hit a saturation point on bands in the Swedish deathly black style, where Thulcandra may not be completely necessary for a lot of fans, but it is a very good album and I do like it. I'm glad I picked it up, and I'm glad I've dove into it and given it a bunch of spins.
Yeah, for me, in spite of all the things I've said, and I know this all comes off pretty negative, it's a solid 7 record for me. Solid 7. I would say stop lifting dissection riffs and just come up with your own riffs. If you want to have the vibe and the feel, great. Do it. Use it. Go with that. But next album, do your own thing. Do it. Do a little bit more yourself. It's a cool sound. I will say that Thulcandra and 4 Records have done what John couldn't do and write, a solid record after his biggest record. Are any of these as good as Storm of the Light's Bane? They're not, but they're the, maybe the underdeveloped twin.
Something's missing. Let's call it part.
Let's call it a chromosome. I don't know. But yeah, I mean, solid record. I don't really want to sit here and keep hating on it because it's good. It's just not. It's not the original that they're trying to uphold, which it's fine. It's good to have bands that are their own thing, and that's what makes the whole tribute thing a little weird for me.
I agree with the 7. I think it's a good number.
Yeah. Well, that's it. We talked a lot about a tribute album, and that's what you get here on Wednesday nights, folks. Before we jet, Kellen, the Cheeto dropping overlord is what is our next what is our next moment of listening? What are we doing?
Yeah, so I just added this to my collection off of. For the longest time, I'd read about this band and kind of wanted to get a few more into my collection to experience it. This is weird. I've been spinning it in my car this past week, and I don't know what to make of it. So I'm hoping wiser minds will guide me through this record. But this is Septic Flesh and Ophidian Wheel,
Oh, that's an old. Oh, that's a great album.
1997, I believe.
Yeah, that's a great record.
So I've listened to it a couple of times through, but it's not a clone.
No,
By no means. It's definitely
and it sounds a lot different than they sound today.
So anyway, Ophidian Wheel, Septic Flesh. There you go.
Cool. Yeah,
All
that's an interesting pick. Very cool. Production notes. Alan, what's going on Friday?
Well, it kind of inadvertently came up in the chat earlier, but Marty and I are finally going to pull the trigger on something we've promised and kind of teased at for a while. And helping us out in this endeavor will be none other than Rick from the Dreadful Minutes, who's been entertaining and posting some really good comments along with his usual humor tonight. We are going to, on Friday night, do a Keep or Reap episode. If you're not familiar with how these work, 2 albums are named, and each person has to decide which of them they will keep and have access to forever. But the other album, they never, ever get to hear again. No loopholes, no listening to it, in your buddy's car or anything like that. One of these albums you give up forever. However, the twist on it this time around is going to be that it is viewer's choice. Marty, Rick, and I will each pick just a few pairs of albums to kind of get the ball rolling at the start of the stream.
Or if y'all suck, we'll have to pick up
or
the
if
slack.
nobody bothers tuning in and doesn't post anything. But really, after the first few that we name, we're going to take comments from the live chat. So everybody out there can spend the next couple of days thinking up some devious pairs to try to put Marty, myself, and Rick in a real bind as to what we will choose and what we will not choose.
And the key to this, there's a key to this. There's Alan is deviated from the key on occasion, just to be mean ass. But pick 2 things that make sense together, as opposed to Alan's like, oh, I'm going to take 2 albums that Marty absolutely loves, that have nothing to do with each other, and just make him squirm. So
I tell you what, when you get Simon to take back his amorphous versus sentence pair, then I'll loosen the thumb screws on you a little bit, Marty. Okay, I'm still crying at night over that one, Simon. You're out there somewhere. You're listening. You're going to hear this.
So yes, viewer's choice. Get ready, folks. Start thinking about it. Do your homework and come to class prepared, because Professor Steele does not take slackers in his class. I'll tell you that right now. Does not do it.
Yes, so it should be fun. I know, folks. We have on occasion, kind of called out some different pairs here and there, and though there's been a couple from like regular viewers like Tim that I've kind of deferred on, like, I'll answer that another day. We'll come back to that sometime. Friday night, there will be no more dodging. You put them in the chat. If it's a good pair, again, it will depend on how much traffic there is. We may not be able to get to everyone's pair. Some pairs may just seem like too random or weird for us to pull up. But yeah, we'll be going through the comments, looking for your pairs, and trying to figure out which album we will keep and which album we will reap. It should be an awful lot of fun. We were glad Rick was willing to do this with us. We think he'll be able to bring, as always, a lot of fun, but Rick's also very quick on his feet. So I think he's going to be able to stand the heat and handle this as well as anybody possibly could. It may be ugly for all of us. We'll see.
So you're not getting any deep content on Friday. We're just going to have a lot of fun and have a lot of cool discussion about some cool records. So
Absolutely.
Yep. Everybody, thank you. Kellen, thank you so much. Jim, as always, thank you so much. We'll be back Wednesday with Ophidian Wheel by Septic Flesh, and go check out Killing for Company. Go check out Eihwaz Recordings, and go check out to Let's Talk Metal. Every Tuesday, he's uploading he just put up one today that I have not seen yet. Have you put up one today?
No, I put up one yesterday because yesterday was Tuesday.
Oh,
And
fuck.
Tuesday is my day.
Well, then I saw it. Then it was the What was it?
I've got CD unboxing stuff for.
Oh
this week.
yeah. Right on.
But and I know I've been doing several sort of content for sale stuff lately. Next week I've already filmed and uploaded it. We're getting back to pulling some old obscure records off the shelf, playing some clips so you can get to hear what some of these sound like, and talking you through bands that never really got their 15 minutes of fame. So next Tuesday morning they get their moment in the spotlight.
Right on. Okay, folks, y'all have a great night. We'll see you Friday, and remember, Womb Ripper.
I thought that was gonna be a chicken joke.
Cheeto
End
Trump.
broadcast.